And thank you all for taking the time to join us. This is a serious and important topic that is relevant for communities all across the Southern Tier, but particularly the communities of Steuben, Schuyler, and Chemung, because as you all know, we have an increasing population of aging individuals. So our session today is being recorded. Everybody stay professional. And I'd like to hand it over to our presenter this evening, Darrin, who's now the host, and he's going to put up his presentation.
Okay, and I have someone who's waiting to come in, so I'm going to admit them if I have the host duties. All right, let's see if what we've got. And I think you should see my slide at that point.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So thanks, and I'm excited to be speaking to you all. I'm coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin, where I serve as the Associate State Director for Community Outreach for AARP. And in that capacity, myself and a colleague lead our livable communities and age-friendly network efforts here in the state of Wisconsin. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Prior to joining AARP in 2019, I worked for the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, where I oversaw all the downtown development programs around the state. And prior to that, I worked in downtown development. So community development has always been a passion of mine, and it's just evolving into different strategies. So one of the things we heard in the beginning there, it was said, the Southern Tier is aging, and what you'll see is you're not alone. Every place is aging. So this is a strategy that's applicable to almost every state. These are slides that AARP had done. We have a program called Disrupt Aging Classroom, where we work with college students to help combat the thoughts of aging, but also encourage them to be thinking about incorporating some aging aspect in their careers as they're embarking on there, because people just aren't thinking about it and showing the potential opportunity, but also showing what the demographics do. So this slide is from 2010, and you can see the darker blue areas are for the percentage of the population that's 65 or above in 2010, and the red circles are just sort of an intensity map, where it's the more people that are over 65. So as you would expect in 2010, Florida is pretty dark blue. That seems to be the place where folks go when they retire. But you can see some of the other states. Now we're going to jump ahead to 2020. And as you would expect, maybe those people that came under the radar, under the 65-year-old mark in 2010, by the time we get to 2020, most of the country is aging, except for Utah. And I still don't have a good idea of why Utah is so young as a state, but it is. But yes, so we can see even my own state of Wisconsin is a dark blue and joining it, and New York has a little less population than the rest of the country. So, I share this, number one, just to say, this is where the aging trend is going. By 2035, there will actually be more people 65 and older in this country than under the age of 18. So if we don't start addressing these things now, we're going to be in trouble soon in how to do it. So I do have a question for you all, and you can feel free to drop the answer in the chat if you like. But when I say AARP, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Just the first word that comes to mind when I mention the term AARP or ARP. Oh, we have somebody in the waiting room. I'm going to admit all there. Thank you. So aging, retirement, senior discounts. Yeah, when I first joined AARP, my parents asked if I was going to sell insurance and cell phones, because that's what they thought AARP was. But ARP is really a larger organization that seeks to empower people to choose how they live as they age. And in that, um, living in your community and planning your community becomes a pretty big part. And so these are our 4 images that we have here. We have some housing, we have some streets and roads, we have parks and public spaces, and we have somebody just sitting alone. And when we look at what these are, just understand, housing is a huge concern here in this country. That currently over half of all households are 1 or 2 person households, but yet the houses that they live in are 2, 3, or 4 or more bedroom homes. So that's a mismatch on where you are in your life stage. In Wisconsin, and I understand many other places, they're screaming that we need workforce housing, and their solution is to build more 3 and 4 bedroom homes. But unfortunately, as people age, you're going to need less of those. And what we really do need is not necessarily senior apartments, but different life stages, little bit smaller house for you get older. You don't need those 3 and 4 bedrooms. Let's get those young families into those 3 and 4 bedroom homes. But when we look at renting as well, we see some concern. And the share of 65 and up renters who are rent burdened has increased from 43% in 2001 to over 50% in 2015. So it's heading in the wrong direction. And less than 1% of US homes are built with universal design in mind. And that's pretty important if you want to age in your home or stay in your home as you get older. We know the benefits of being able to stay in your home as long as you possibly can without it causing stress or safety concerns. We know the benefits of staying around neighbors and with people who and they're comfortable there. And so that universal design aspect is pretty important. Then we also, one of the other things that's important for our communities is older adults outlive their ability to drive by 7 to 10 years. So what are they going to do for those other 7 to 10 years? Are there transit options? Are there walkable communities? Are we designed that people can still maintain their independence if we'd like them to live in their homes or if they'd like to live in their homes? And then when we look at the pedestrian deaths, older adults represent a disproportionate amount of pedestrian fatalities in 35 states. That's scary. So now people aren't able to drive, so they're walking and they're getting hit more by people in automobiles. And that's something that we need to take a look at. When we look at public spaces, which is another important aspect of living in a community and planning for spaces for a graying community, older adults represent more than 20% of the population, but only 44% of park users. So why aren't they using parks? And parks serving communities of color are half the size and 5 times as crowded, which increases the temperatures. And older adults represent a disproportionate share of heat-related deaths. So when thinking about our parks and open spaces, do we have the opportunity for people to go out and enjoy them? And then last, the concept of isolation and loneliness. And this is universal, not just in the United States. I mean, I'm connected with people across Europe and across the world, and isolation and loneliness is increasing at incredible rates. So much so that the UK has even created a minister of loneliness to help address this problem there. But it has physical detriments to somebody's health as they get older. And isolation and loneliness presents health risks that are equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So you will see some truly related health outcomes from being lonely in the isolation. And it's associated with 50% of the increases of the risk of dementia when you're isolated as a community. And if you've ever heard speak or read the book by a gentleman by the name of Kevin Klinkenberg, he wrote a book called Palaces for the People, and which talks about the importance of public space in building community. But he got his start as a graduate student in the University of Chicago, and he was studying the heat wave of the mid-90s and understanding that most of the deaths there weren't centered upon your socioeconomic status or your ethnicity or race, but the deaths were how lonely you were and how connected you were to your neighbors. If people weren't checking up on you, if people weren't concerned about you, no matter who you were, you had a better than average chance of dying from the heat. And so isolation and loneliness is a true health threat that we deal with. And many people ask me, why does AARP get into this? What is it about, if they're out there protecting the rights of Social Security and Medicare, what is it about livable communities that AARP wants to get into? And this came from, just talking to our members, that back in 2010 in a survey, we have, over 38 million members, and 77% of them responded that they wanted to stay in their current community for as long as possible. And when you look at it, we recognize that their communities and, more importantly, their homes weren't designed for them to stay in there. And so AARP said, you know what? Thinking about a long-range plan of our organization, we better wade into these waters and figure out the best way to help communities and residents alike get in touch with how to make those the best places that they can be, and they can live a comfortable and safe life. And so what we see from the increasingly aging population in the US is the desire to age in place. We talk, prior to joining AARP, I used to think that the normal progression in life was you retire, you stay in your home for a little bit, and then you move to a senior living community, an assisted living, nursing home. And thank goodness I joined AARP, because I have completely changed my thoughts on this. The percentage of the population that are in assisted living and nursing homes is just a very small part. The research does show the importance of being able to stay in your home or in your community with the people that you know and can socialize with. But also for an increasingly aging population, we recognize that the housing is not suitable for aging in place. The streets are unsafe if you don't drive. There's a lack of public transit options, or sometimes no transit options for people. And then other factors that they have to deal with, employment, whether, we're living longer, healthier lives, people want to stay working more to feel like they're contributing to society. And so what are those employing options? And people are dealing with age discrimination in the workplace, but also dealing with distance from family, health issues, isolation, and just the general sprawl. All right, we'll go back to sharing my screen here. And so with the livable communities concept, AARP really looks at what it calls the 8 domains of livability. And so we look at housing, we look at outdoor spaces and buildings, we look at transportation in the communities, communication and information, how are people receiving this, civic participation and employment, respect and social inclusion, health services and community supports, and social participation. And I'll get into a little bit talk a little bit more as we go through here. So outdoor space and buildings. We know the benefits of being connected to nature. We know what looking at trees and being among trees and grass does to our blood pressure. It calms us down. It releases all the good hormones in our body, and how important that is. So how are people connected? But more importantly, how are they able to get that? Do we have public spaces that are close by that people could use? Do we have public spaces that provide amenities such as shade trees and benches for people to sit on? And this is all the things that communities need to look at. We look at transportation and all the options there. Many times you say transportation, we think of buses and cars. And yes, they're part of the transportation matrix, but we look at, however people may walk or roll, whether that's on a bike or a mobility device or whatever that might be, how are they able to get around? Are they able to do activities for daily living without relying on an automobile, especially in those years when they're not able to drive? And a lot of this is hitting home for me. My dad turned 78 in November. He's had some medical procedures, and as a result, he's given up driving. He has a defibrillator installed, and he's just afraid that if it should go off when he's driving, he doesn't want to hurt somebody else. And so, we have to look at how he's able to get around without just not relying on my mom to chauffeur him where he goes. And so we look at housing. We've talked about this before. Number one, are our houses built for us to age in? I saw in the comments somebody mentioned that ranch style houses are more appropriate. Yes, they're a great design to start off with. But even more, a ranch design home up on a hill that you need 20 or 30 steps to get to isn't necessarily the best home for somebody as they get older. So we have to look at what is the accessibility of the home, as well as the livability inside. And also not only for the occupants, but also their guests. If you're going to have friends over, how easy is it for them to get around your home, or family members, in all the layouts? And one of the things, we'll get into resources later on, but I'm going to plug AARP's Home Fit guide. This is a great resource for people. It's free. You can order copies. You can do a checklist through your home. Maybe New York runs home fit workshops. I'm not real sure, or you can request them. But it is a great way for you just to look at your home, no matter your age or where you're at. I just turned 50 this year, but in doing these workshops, in planning for renovations that we did last year, I incorporated a lot of universal design principles in the renovated home. I don't necessarily need it now, but you never know. As I heard one person say, being differently abled is the only thing that can change tomorrow for any person. You're not going to be 10 years older. You're not going to all of a sudden change your ethnicity, but you might wake up tomorrow and be on crutches or have to use a mobility device. And there's no better time to plan for that than now, while it's not a crisis for you. And so being able to do that stuff is really helpful. And we look at social participation and how welcoming and opening is the community. There's a program called Blue Zones. Dan Buettner has run this program for a number of years based on some studies he did from National Geographic. And they show that, above genetics, healthy eating and connectedness, social connectedness, are some of the biggest factors in adding quality of life and longevity to people's years. And so these are really important for any community. How are we able to be connected in socially in many different ways in our community? And this isn't just people your own age, but how conducive is it to being connected for people of different generations? Because we learn from each other. I think we've gotten too segregated in a society by age, and younger people only hang with younger people and older people only hang with older people. And we really can learn from each other. There's a lot of knowledge and wisdom and life experience that older people can pass on to the younger people, and vice versa. So we always encourage that social participation intergenerational. But also there's that respect part. And so how likely are we to be respected and included in those social situations? We look at civic participation and employment. What is your community like for volunteer opportunities? No one wants to reach the end of their working career and feel like they have nothing more to contribute to society. And so what opportunities do we have for people to volunteer, to share their life experience and skills and give back to the community? Or if you work in a job that you can still do as you get older and you're healthy, what opportunities are there, and how welcoming are employers to being able to accommodate that? We've just started speaking with the Wisconsin Economic Development Association on working with employers around the state to understand flexible schedules. And maybe you have somebody who wants to go into semi-retirement, and you have a younger person, maybe they have family commitments and they want to work part-time. Is there a way you can work schedules so that you can get a full-time person out of that and still engage people in the workforce? We look at communication and information. How are people getting it? There's so many different ways that people can get their information. What are the ways to reach people in a sensible fashion that people can feel like they're connected to their community that way? And we look at community and health services. If there's one thing that COVID-19 has shown us, is that we have some promising facilities with telehealth, if we're not able to get to the doctor, and then a big challenge with access to broadband. We look at many of our rural areas that just don't have the bandwidth to be able to effectively use or safely use telehealth. And so what are those opportunities? And we know that, you know, hospitals are expensive and clinics are expensive, and many rural areas across our country don't have them in every community. So we want to see what are the best options for making sure our residents are connected to community and health services, and as we plan for that. And so now we're going to get into those are the 8 domains of livability. You can find them and more information on a variety of these sites that I'm going to show you through AARP. I'll encourage you, and I really would welcome somebody, if you're not already subscribed, to subscribe to the AARP Livable Communities newsletter. It's a weekly e-newsletter that comes out. You can text it. You can sign up by text to Livable at 50757, or on the website, which I'll give you here in a little bit. You can get there as well and sign up. But it's great information. It's not spam stuff. I subscribed to this long before I came to work for AARP and found it very useful. And there are ideas that you can bring back into your community and do something with them. And so I highly encourage that. And then I'm going to move on to one of the best tools that AARP, and I'm proud to be part of an organization that's done this, and it's the Livability Index. The website is here at livabilityindex.aarp.org. And this is a system that AARP has developed in order to understand your community. And I'm going to drop a link in the chat for a YouTube video. One of the things my state office does is we host a weekly live stream show. And we hosted one of our national office colleagues who explained, because this was all just refreshed just a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, back in the spring. And so it looks at things you can put in by census tract, you can put in by neighborhood, you can put in by zip code, you can put in by city. And it'll look at things of access to public spaces. What are the employment outlooks? How does the transportation look? Are you relying on an automobile? What is the walkability score that goes in there? What is housing affordability like? And you know, there's also tools in there that are helpful in comparing different parts within the same community. How does this area connect, you know, compare to this area over here? And there's real-time, you know, heat maps or color-coded maps that help outline all of that. So the link that I showed you on the YouTube channel, that's about a 20-minute video or so. Jenna Lynott from our national office, she explains how to use that. And so I highly encourage people to watch that, but also go in and view the Livability Index. See how your city, how your neighborhood, how your zip code compares. And, you know, use that to identify and start working with your communities to identify strategies. How are we going to address some of these things? There are some aspects of it that just not going to change. You know, one of it is our connection to employee pollution based on car travel. And we have one community in Wisconsin that's right next to an interstate. And they said, well, you know, we're not going to be able to do that. We can't take the cars off the interstate. And you're right. So let's focus on something else. You know, understand the things you can't change and go on to work on the things that you can. But this is a great tool that you can go ahead and start planning those for communities. And this was just the link to our general YouTube channel, but the link that I shared with you is a direct one to that video. But I do encourage you, if you want to see just all livable communities topics. We started this live stream back at the beginning of the COVID isolation when we all started working from home, and we broadcast it live every Thursday. You can watch it on demand, but the first Thursday of every month is dedicated to a livable communities topic. And we have somebody from our national office or something we're doing in the state or other noted experts to talk about those topics. So I encourage you to check those out. If I could do a little shameless self-promotion here. And in general, if you haven't been, I do encourage you to visit aarp.org/livable. I spoke about the newsletter, and you can sign up on this page here. But it's a true repository of all kinds of information. There's resources that are there that you'll find on different topics, and I'll show you a screenshot of some of them. It has toolkits and fact sheets, resources. There's blogs that are posted on a weekly basis. And so I think you could get lost in here for hours. So don't do it if you're going to take 5 minutes before you have to go somewhere. To do so when you have a little bit of time. And so, yeah, here are some of the resources that you'll see here. We have a lot about homes and accessory dwelling units, as well as different types of housing. There's great parks and public spaces collection that we've done in coordination with 880 Cities out of Toronto and Project for Public Lands. The Home Fit Guide I mentioned. Any of these resources, when you go onto the website there at aarp.org/livable, you can download them as an electronic file, or you can order up paper copies, printed copies, and have them shipped to you. There's no cost to that. You can order multiple copies if you want to share them with some friends. You know, and that's the same way with any of AARP's resources that you can do. So I encourage you to take a look at that. So real quickly, I just want to talk about, you know, we move from all these resources. And so what is AARP doing to actually help communities move forward? And so if you're not familiar with it already, I'd like to just give a quick introduction to the Age-Friendly Network, or as AARP calls it, the Network of Age-Friendly States and Communities, which is quite a mouthful there. And quick history. So we began the Livable Communities work in 2010. Soon thereafter, we were approached by the World Health Organization to be a US affiliate for their Age-Friendly Cities initiative that they have. That's a global initiative there. AARP agreed to do that. And in 2012, Macon-Bibb, Georgia was the first community to join the network there. At the time, in talking with our staffers who have worked on it, they said, we expected 50 communities or so would be interested in this. Well, now we have over 650 communities in all of the states, plus the territories of US Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, as well as Washington, DC. And so this is a universally interesting network. And they're communities of all different sizes, but most of them are under 25,000 in population. So relatable to most communities that we work with. And I know that in Wisconsin, all but 3 of the ones we work with currently are under 25,000 population. But our largest is our capital city of Madison at about 300,000, and then 2 of our smaller cities of Appleton and La Crosse. But this will give you an idea of where the communities are located. Some also of interesting notes, we had some interest from states who said we want to take an age-friendly state approach in what we do. And so they created the states designation there. And so the 7 states that we have are all shaded in the pink there on the map. And so interesting, and I know that New York is there, and New York was one of the first age-friendly states in the network. So it's something for you all to be proud of. Joining the network, it's voluntary. There's no cost to join. You make a 5-year commitment to do so. You take the first 18 months to 2 years to understand the perceptions of livability in your community and develop an action plan to change it. And then you work on the implementation of that action plan in the next 3 years. At the end of the cycle, you report out on some of the things that went well and some of the things maybe not so well. And then you have an option as a community and say, yes, we'd like to do it again, or hey, thanks, this was fun, but we're going to move on. So again, there's no obligation or anything like that. You know, and it is just really, the intention is getting people to look at being age-friendly through a policy and planning lens. What are we doing in our communities to make sure that we're addressing this aging community that we're dealing with, and doing that with over 650 other people around the country, or other communities around the country who are going through the exact same thing. So it's not an isolation network. You're not doing it alone. You can learn from others as you go forward. And through that, there's also, I'm going to share another link here as I've tried to pull these all up. We have many opportunities in the network for training and technical assistance. And one of them they do every year is a Livable Communities Workshop, where members of the network are invited to participate. In past years, they've been in person, but that's not going to be possible. It hasn't been possible because of COVID, and it's not happening again this year. But we do have a virtual network coming up, workshop on housing for all ages. And so these are free to join. I dropped the link in the chat. You can sign up. It's September 21st and 22nd, I think from 1 to 4 in the afternoon Eastern time. If I recall, I run on Central Time, so I think those are the Eastern time zone for the programming. But I invite you to drop in and watch those. We have presenters and practitioners from all across the country who are doing that, because each state was asked to name somebody in their state who's working on it. And so we're excited in Wisconsin to have 2 representatives who are presenting. So this is the Age-Friendly Network. You can find information on aarp.org/livable. There's a tab for the Age-Friendly Network if that's something you are interested in. Some of the benefits of joining, again, there's no fee to it. It really does serve as an organizing structure for making your community improvements. It helps to build collaboration and partnerships that might not be there within your community. And it enables changes that benefit people of all ages. While AARP is focused on the 50+, let's be honest, if you make a community more livable for someone who's 65, 70, 80 years old, you've really made it livable for everybody. The young kids who are running around the streets, you've made it livable for the mothers pushing strollers or dealing with the toddlers. It's just a better place for everybody there. It also provides public recognition for your community to being age-friendly. We provide resources and in some opportunities, training and technical assistance. And you also get the support materials from AARP on that. Some of the things that it does not include, being age-friendly does not mean that it's not a badge that you get to have out there. It means we're working on it. It's more of an aspiration than it is a recognition of your practices that are out there. And it doesn't label you as a great place to retire. So the age-friendly list is not the things you see roll across Facebook or the internet of all the top 100 places to do things. And membership does not mean that AARP endorses any of your communities. The state enrollment in the network, so New York's enrollment in the network does not mean that every community in New York is enrolled in the network. You have to do that on an individual basis. And it doesn't necessarily provide you any grants or funding. Although you will find on the Livable Community page, we do have an annual community challenge grant that's opened up for applications in the spring. And right now, folks are full long into implementing those before the end of November of this year. So there are some great opportunities for funding on some quick action projects. So that was the concepts of, from our perspective, of planning for a graying community. And I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. So I often find that the most benefit comes from just a discussion that we can have together here and answering your questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we'll take an opportunity to address some of your questions or your concerns. How many have heard, actually, I'm just curious, how many have heard about AARP's Livable Communities or network of age-friendly communities? Okay, we have a few here on the screen. So I always love when I can at least introduce the concept to more people who haven't heard about it, because it really is, a useful tool, and it could be started. We've had some of our communities in Wisconsin who were started by local governments. You always do need the local government as a partner, because they do have to submit a resolution or a letter showing that they support this, because ultimately we like policy and planning change. So if you don't have them in the beginning, it's not going to happen. But I can tell you some of our most just zealous programs that we have here were all started by community people that got together and said, we want to see change in our community, and we're going to bring you along, local government unit, and we'd love for you to be a partner in this. And they do willingly. Anytime the government doesn't have to take the lead on something, I think they're also, at least for the staff perspective, I think they're happy to be a part of it, but not the lead on there. And I can also tell you that during COVID, those that continued moving forward were the ones led by local community members and not nestled in a local government department, because they were pulled in many different directions during that time. So questions? I think feel free to come off mute and we can just ask them by voice. It's a small enough group here.
This is Patty from Steuben County Office for the Aging, and I just wanted to echo your last sentiment about government not necessarily being the lead on it. And I think some of the best work that's come out of our community has been a partnership where the Office for the Aging can enhance what is being done or augment the plan, but not necessarily take the lead. And I think in recent years, agencies have really been stretched, and it's all we can do to keep our head above water. But these initiatives are really important to us, and if there were more hours in the day, we would like to take the lead on it. But I think Offices for the Aging have a nice array of services that can enhance what's already being done. And what we have with Coordinating Aging in place, I'm just constantly amazed in the things that they can do with their strategies. They've just got great creativity in that group. So thanks. This is a good presentation.
Good to hear. Thank you.
So this is Hilda Lando, also from Steuben County. Live in Corning, but represent the city of Corning at the county legislature. And we are actively involved now in a comprehensive plan for the county. We haven't done one in, I don't know how many years. And also, I think Kate's on City of Corning's doing a comprehensive plan. So this kind of information is valuable as we go forward, trying to decide how we're going to put things in place. So thank you. This is very, very great information, and I will start going on to those sites. I've never gone on those sites, but thank you.
You're welcome. I can say that a few of our communities that I know of here in Wisconsin have actually incorporated and used this process in their comprehensive plan updates that they've been able to do it. And that's the city of La Crosse and the city of Wausau have both done that. And we have a question in the chat. Spoke of working seniors. If a business looks to fill empty positions with seniors, what are the things they need to consider in terms of design hours, et cetera? Seniors return into workforce when so many left during COVID. I haven't seen the latest. I'll get to the second part of that question about seniors returning to the workforce. I haven't seen the latest stats on there about the return to the workforce for the older population. So I can't speak with authority on that one. As far as it goes with designing hours, I think, understanding depending on somebody's life situation. So obviously, we're not painting a broad brush and where they are. One of the things, and I'm a facilitator for that program, that Disrupt Aging Classroom program. And one of the things that was an aha moment for me was, many times we paint, with a broad brush, people who are 60 and older. And you think at no other time do we ever lump such a large group with so many different life situations in one big swath like that. And so, we look at what's the situation for those folks. Some folks might be, just want to work. And I know anecdotally people that I know who've just said, what, we're going into semi-retirement. We still want to work. We're still able and healthy to work. We want to feel like we're doing something. Maybe we still need a little bit of the money. We don't have, full-on money to retire. But they've gone back to part-time. I'm looking forward to having these discussions with Wisconsin employers because Wisconsin, when I worked for the State Economic Development Organization, they were hell-bent on millennials. And we've got to, get the under 30 crowd to move to Wisconsin. And they spent millions of dollars on bus campaigns in Chicago, trying to get Chicago younger people to move to Wisconsin. And I just thought, okay, one day you're going to wake up and realize you've got the people you are. What are you doing to support those who are already here? So now we're excited to actually be at the table to talk about this stuff. So I don't have any full on, but if you go to our general AARP website, that's aarp.org. Again, you could get lost for days. Maybe let somebody know you're going on there because they might need to send a rescue crew. There are things, we have the Public Policy Institute. And so there's a whole team in Washington, D.C. that just research all these policy topics on working after 50 plus. And what does the changing workforce look like? If you use the source function, there's a whole thing on jobs. And so finding a job when you're 50 plus and getting people ready for that, updating life skills in the job market for when you're 50 and older. And so there's all kinds of information there that you can find.
I have a question about the 8 domains of livability. I thought that was very helpful, specifically for our local governments, in how they can interact with their residents, because they have many departments that serve many functions. They have a lot of different staff. Is there any guidance out there for governments taking this presentation to their own staff and finding out where they can better assist the community, or identifying other partners in the county or in the region that might be able to supplement the services offered by the local government?
Yeah, you'll definitely find that information on the website. They're under the age-friendly section of the livable communities. There's little videos that you can do that. The livability index, when you click on it, you can get information about just how it was measured and how it got there and where your area compares to other national averages, so that people can see, if we want to move the needle, here are some things that we need to do. And there was a question about missing middle housing, and AARP has been a big promoter of that, and I am as well. AARP is really focused on just housing choices for people, and one of them are accessory dwelling units. People are haven't quite embraced that for a number of reasons, and how do we set up a smaller house on a lot that we have there? First and foremost, I have a friend who just went through this in Madison. They finally made it so that you can do it, but it's going to cost them almost $200,000 to build a 700 square foot house in the back. Doesn't make a lot of financial sense at this moment. So then we look at missing middle housing, and so these are the things from, the single family homes, the 3 and 4 bedroom single family homes, and not quite the 50 unit apartment building. What's in the middle there for folks, and whether they be townhomes or smaller. We've seen these in the development of cities. We've seen the houses that are 4 little 4 or 6 unit garden apartment buildings. They're in almost every neighborhood in almost all the communities across the country. And we've slowly outlawed them in our communities. And we just need to bring them back, and say that they can exist there. There's a way to get density without making too much density in the neighborhood. And this is a big push that I'm doing personally, because I think that this is an opportunity for our communities. In Madison, work a lot in rural Wisconsin. And in the big cities, we have people putting up apartment buildings all over the place and still not able to keep up with the demand. But in the rural communities, they're getting nothing. And it's because, it's cost them just as much to build it in the rural community as it does. And there aren't enough workers to go around and do that. And so, of course, from a developer standpoint, they are, just focusing on larger cities, but we can do the smaller ones. In Wisconsin, there are some stumbling blocks in the state building code. And so we're working to change those to make it a little bit easier to do that as well. So these are all things that you need to look at from, not only a local, but also sometimes a state perspective when it comes to those things.
A challenge that I see with the middle housing is those affordable single family homes, the ones that would be a starter home in most cases. We're seeing a lot of those getting purchased by investors to convert to rentals. And, I suppose in a new subdivision, you could have a homeowners association and covenants that would, prohibit rentals of the units. But when you talk about a neighborhood where the homes have existed for 100 years, how are you aware of any communities out there that have been able to address this issue and prevent those kinds of conversions that are really eating away the available supply for people on a modest income or our first-time home buyers?
Unfortunately, I'm not. And I know that it is, a big challenge across the country of, the larger equity firms buying up homes and converting them into rental. But I don't know that anybody has come up with a solution that I've seen now. I know there's a lot of discussion on this. If people are familiar with the Strong Towns organization out of Minnesota, they have a lot of discussion on this. Nobody's come up with the right solution that's been implemented so far that I've seen.
This is Judy Garrett. I have a comment to make about housing. I'm with the Corning Area Aging in Place group. We've been in existence about 12 years now. We've been doing a housing study of our own for the past several months because we are obviously concerned about this same issue. And we've been working with somebody who has some plans for a different kind of housing, but she doesn't seem to be getting any support locally. And I'm wondering if, since Southern Tier Central is sponsoring you in this program, which is very good, maybe we need to work together.
I might hypothesize that we may have met with that individual.
It's very possible, yes.
And we have discussed it, and
Maybe you'd like to talk to our group because we have some issues too, some thoughts.
okay.
I think it'd be good to see, for you to see what we've gathered in terms of information.
Sure, absolutely. You've seen my email address and all the contact information for this event tonight, so feel free to reach out to me directly. And
What I don't
great.
know is your name.
Victoria.
Victoria.
Victoria
Okay.
Galen.
Thank you.
And since I have you all here, if anybody needs a certificate for training, I can send it to the 20 people who've shown up here today. Thank you all very much. And Tammy, I don't have an email address for you. So if you could please put in the chat box an email address directly to STC Planning so I can send you your certificate. I have a question about density. So you've described some solutions that work in areas that are medium to high density. Are there specific services or functions that work best in medium to low density rural neighborhoods, like hamlets? I know that most of our communities, you can mark the Dollar General as you drive by certain areas of density. Is there a similar function in the aging in place universe that we could hypothesize would occur at that same density? That, wherever we have enough older people together to put in a Dollar General, we could have then you tell us.
I think that it is going to be as individual as the community in what they need. There's, I think when we sometimes take just a universal approach to some of those services, we end up with something as vanilla. And I'm going to crack on San Francisco right now because it used to be one of my favorite cities in the world, and now it's any place USA and has no soul because they've just made it the same as every place else. But I think that this is a perfect opportunity for engaging the community. One of the things that I work with on communities is to help the local residents understand they are the experts in their community. They don't need to bring somebody in from the outside. They're the ones that know their communities best. And maybe they just need somebody to help them draw the questions out in order to ask the right questions, to get some of these things. But, the planning part of that is really located right within the community themselves and those answers. I think, one of my favorite concepts is, you might have heard of the 15-minute city that got big over COVID, and Paris had done that. But quite honestly, I think, what's the 15-minute neighborhood? And I'm going to borrow this gentleman by the name of Gil Penalosa. I heard him talk about it. We realize in a 15-minute city, you're going to have things like cultural resources that maybe you're not going to get to, within 15 minutes in the city. But what are the daily things you need? What's a local grocery store? What's going to replace the Dollar General that actually is going to have something that's truly supportive of our local communities? The pharmacy, the hardware store, things like that we can get to within 15 minutes of our homes or our neighborhoods. Again, through zoning, these things used to be there, but through zoning, we've outlawed many of these as non-allowable uses in these communities. And we used to have it, and people were, they they develop these over time and by experience, and we just thought we knew better. And I think we've made things worse, and we just need to go a little bit back to look at how some of the older communities are, to understand, what we need for in a smaller scale for the smaller communities.
In your presentation, when you were talking about graying communities, did you just mean to meet people in their homes or apartments? Are you including adult homes, assisted living, skilled nursing facilities? And does AARP, if they're thinking about those places where still people would age in a community, do they look at the financial implications? And my name's Mary Hallinan, and I'm from Aging in Place as well.
ARP looks at that a lot. The assisted living facilities, the nursing homes, the senior care facilities, or the living facilities. Research still comes down that says the best place for a person is in their home, or in an individual home in their community where they're still connected socially. The challenge that I see in a lot of the senior living facilities is they're built in green fields out miles from anywhere else, where you're going to need an automobile to get a gallon of milk. And if we can do that, so they're built close in that people can walk, or they're connected to a community and those services, that maintains the independence. And so we're always supportive of those. I look at, my own experience. Well, I didn't realize it at the time. Back in my late 20s, I worked in a neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio called German Village. And I got there, and I had the benefit of being connected to people of all different age groups. I was my late 20s. I had a regular meal group a monthly meal group that we got connected with. And there were people in there in their 40s, 50s, on up to a centenarian. And Katie, who was 100 years old when I first met her, and 106 when I moved away, lived alone in her home. Her husband had passed away years ago. She walked to the market every day. She walked to the doctors every day. She had a neighborhood, a social community and neighbors who knew her routine. And if something was amiss, they were the first people to speak up and go and find out what was wrong. And all of that kept her healthy and alive. And so that is, it can happen. And that's what, that's my personal philosophy and what I always strive for. And how do we keep you connected socially first? And people of different generations in those social connections, and then as living as independently as possible without it causing stress in your life. I was a participant in a survey or a study by University of Wisconsin that looked at people in the early stages of dementia and their homes and what it does. And through wearables and tracking in their homes, they could tell what areas of homes increased heart rate and what the functions we were doing. And the kitchens were the #1 places. And we looked at how do we design kitchens so that people can still use it. If you're losing the ability to lift things up, how do we design things so they're there? Then you could see the cascade of things. If people weren't able to put things away, they just sat on the tables and they sat on the counters. Well, then they couldn't cook at all. So then they just started eating fast food or frozen pizza. And that wasn't helpful in life. And so how do we help negate all of that to keep as stressless living environment as you possibly have? And sometimes that does mean moving to a different facility that could help you out. But then how do we still maintain that connection to the larger community as a whole, which is vitally important? I think that was a long-winded answer to your question. I'm sorry.
But a very good answer. This has been a wonderful presentation. I'm Ed Lewis with Aging in Place here in Corning also. I see 3 other of our people here. That's good. But I know there's several who would love to hear this presentation. I know it's recorded. Is there a way that we can have access to it for these other people that couldn't have made it here tonight?
Yes, we're going to post this video to STC's YouTube page. We have several other training courses about seeker and local zoning that we have up on the YouTube page. So we can have a link to it, and I'll be able to share it with you.
Wonderful, that would be great.
Any other questions? Are there any just like ideas? Some people were putting a lot of thoughts into the comments. Would you like us to go back and
Well,
look-
I think even though I'm here with the group, I want to see it again because it's a lot to digest in one setting. And there's so many new things that I heard there that are just sound like intriguing. One of the things that we found when we were trying to put together an aging in place guidebook for housing is that there's so much out there available that it's overwhelming unless you know just where to look and where to start and who to talk to. And that's what we're going to try to aim at, is to digest some of that, pre-digest it, so that when somebody the next morning can't go to get up and needs to change living style, they know what their options are and where they can go, look to.
You know, the other thing that I want to say is that I think you have to look at the resources that we have already. And there's so much equity in these homes that are paid off that older people have. And, you know, you look at the shiny new model of some new innovative program, and what really matters as people age is responding to their care needs. And I think that a lot of times I see projects get started by the able-bodied older people, and then they age out of they kind of outlive the project. But if you could design it with the end in mind, that you can bring, I'm sorry about the background noise, with the services that are ultimately maybe needed if there isn't a lot of family support, I think that's important.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. This was a fantastic presentation with really great attendance. I hope that you all take a lot from it. STC's office is available for questions, and you can forward questions to the AARP or to the State Office of the Aging or our local county offices of the Aging. If you have anything else that you'd like to let me know, please feel free to email me.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It was great discussions.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
That's a
Thank you.
a great presentation. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for being here.